Welcome back to Ranking the Souls Games, the video series where I rank the Souls games by a different topic each episode. Today we're going to talk about fighting! That's what we love, right? In the Souls games I mean, not in a pub at 11 PM on a Friday after downing 10 pints of lager juice. Good thing people aren't turning up to pubs with moonlight greatswords and cross naganatas. Combat is so inherently important to these games, and the fact that it's so fun and rewarding is what keeps us coming back for repeat playthroughs. But which game in this illustrious series has the best combat? Well, today I'm going to rank them from my least favourite to my most favourite. You know the drill. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below about which is your favourite or least favourite as well, and if you haven't done so, smash the old subscribe button for more content and to help support the channel. Round 1, begin! Number 7, Demon Souls. I know, I'm sorry for putting Demon Souls at the bottom again, but I just find this painfully slow. The combat never feels that satisfying to me, as it often seems like my character's wading through a thick sea of porridge. I was surprised that they didn't really change this in the remake. It's still crazy slow and feels very limited. I guess I can't be too hard on it, as it's the first game in the series, but this combined with the very easy bosses is one of the reasons that it's the game I've played the least amount of times, only having completed the original and the remake once each. The rolling and attacking here feels like it takes loads of stamina, which I know some people like and they enjoy managing the stamina in this very kind of strict way, but for me I just find it grinds some fights to a halt. There's not really all that much more to say on it. I just personally prefer a faster, more dynamic combat style, and because of this, Demon Souls has my least favourite combat in the series. Number 6, Dark Souls 2. So, I'd be lying if I said I found this leagues better than Demon Souls. It's definitely a bit faster, but the movement in this game just always feels really weird. Everything feels quite floaty. I mentioned before in my no leveling run video that the combat often doesn't feel satisfying because the hitboxes are really bad on some of the bosses, and every playthrough of the game I do is filled with moments where it looks like I dodged perfectly, but I still take some damage. Also, if you don't realise about what adaptability is and you don't end up leveling it, you're in for a really bad time with minimal rolling iframes and slow healing animations. They really should have done a better job explaining such a crucial stat. I'm so glad they didn't bring this back in any future games. Rolling, attacking, and again feels like it takes a lot of stamina, and I really dislike the weapon durability system, as some weapons are so fragile you need to carry a bunch of repair powder for them to be viable. Having a weapon break mid-fight when you went in with it at full durability is super annoying. The game does have some positives though, like power stancing for example, the two-weapon style which went on to inspire stuff in Elden Ring. This creates a nice variety, mixing and matching different weapons, but even so, this is only marginally better than Demon Souls for me. Number 5, Dark Souls 1. You know, even this low down, I think the combat here does work pretty well within the confines of this game. Everything feels quite balanced, and you can roll out pretty quickly. Weapon durability exists here also, but it takes a lot longer to run down than Dark Souls 2. The downside compared to Dark Souls 2 is that you don't have a bar immediately on the screen showing you your weapon durability. You can only see it by going into your inventory, and it's pretty easy to forget about this, not check it, and then go into a fight and have the weapon break in the middle of it, which is, pretty frustrating. Rolling and attacking also still feels like it takes a good amount of stamina to do, but I find it more balanced than Demon Souls or Dark Souls 2 here. It's a good mix of needing to monitor it but not having it ground the fight to a halt in the middle of it. The combat is still a bit slower than my favourites of the series, and it does definitely feel a bit dated now, but it's still pretty enjoyable for a game that old and makes doing repeat runs a pleasure, especially when you focus on pure rolling instead of a shield. Number 4. Dark Souls 3. Honestly, number 4 and number 3 were the hardest to rank in this list. I'd probably still change my mind on this if you asked me on a different day. You're probably wondering how can I rank this as only number 4 for best combat when I voted it number 1 for best bosses. Well, I guess it's kind of on the basis of variety compared to the other entries above, or just things feeling really tight. 90% of people who play Dark Souls 3, myself included, will stick to R1, dodging, and Estus in battle and nothing else. Literally just those 3 commands. This is because, let's be real about this, the other options just aren't that great. R2 is so much slower and doesn't do that much damage, so it's just not worth it compared to going in with R1. The weapon arts which they add to this game seem to be mostly useless from my experience. You need to monitor FP to use them, have a different type of Estus flask to restore them, but the extra damage just never seems worth it for the extra faff. The combat is still very fun, and again, the boss encounters are amazing, so I really love this game, but the variation does let it down here a little bit. But there's something to be said for just having a stripped back experience, and it definitely does work well against the bosses in this game. Number 3, Elden Ring. So from something with not very much variety to something with a huge amount of variety. Where Dark Souls 3's weapon arts were basically useless, Elden Ring goes in the opposite direction and gives you Ashes of War, which sometimes feel crazy overpowered and can tear through the bosses. You've also got jump attacks which do a great deal of poise damage to enemies, setting them up for critical attacks, and power stancing returns also in full glory. I actually really like it here. You've also got the option of crouching for stealth, which is pretty neat to sneak up on enemies, and even mounted combat, which, although not my favourite, is nice as an extra option and is good for some particular encounters. The main downside with this game is that it just doesn't always feel balanced. Some combat approaches feel insanely difficult, while with others, like Ashes of War for example, they can feel way too strong. But they have been working on nerfing some of these to give a better overall sense of balance to the game. I do generally enjoy fighting here, and definitely do want to do more repeat runs of this in the future. Number 2, Bloodborne. The first FromSoft game to have truly fast combat, and it achieves this really well. The rally system is an excellent idea to encourage aggression, and definitely help people move away from the more cautious combat of Dark Souls 1 and 2. I think they should definitely bring this back in a future game. I know there's a rune that allows you to do this in Elden Ring, but it's definitely not really the same thing. I also love the transformation attacks on the weapons. It gives many more options for combos in the middle of combat, and the gun parrying is a nice touch, even if it can trivialize some boss encounters. I like the faster dodges, and also the faster healing with the blood vials, but to be honest, if you run out of them it can be pretty annoying to farm more. My only criticisms are firstly that I wish there were a few more weapons, but to be fair, those that they do have tend to be pretty useful, and I prefer a smaller selection of weapons that are all viable instead of a bunch of useless ones which are included just as a joke. Also, I touched on this in the bosses ranking, but not all of the bosses complement Bloodborne's combat that well. Those that do though really highlight how fun it can be. Number 1, Sekiro. So it's probably interesting that I'd put this at number 1 after ranking Dark Souls 3 lower for a lack of variety. Sekiro technically has the least variety of all the games, as you can't change your weapon at all. Sure, there are some weapon skills to unlock and different ninja tools you can use to help, but really the bread and butter of this game comes down to the countering system. Pressing L1 at the right time to deflect attacks, which helps to build up your enemy's posture bar to set them up for a death blow. Often fights can feel like rhythm games, timing deflections and breathtaking sword fight spectacles. You also have jumping and Mikiri counters, specifically for avoiding horizontal swipes and thrusts respectively. This game is the harshest learning curve, but when you finally get your head around the combat, it is a magical experience. Feels like some kind of beautiful dance, and probably my favourite combat of any video game. Do I prefer variety in Souls or Elden Ring? Definitely, and I wouldn't want every game to do what Sekiro does, but this one element is done so well, it's hard for me not to put this at the top. Well, that's my thoughts, but what about you? Which game has your favourite or least favourite combat? Let me know in the comments below, and of course hit the subscribe button for more content and to help support the channel. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.